What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Week 4 Early Waiver Wire Show here on FantasyInsiders.com. David Kitchen alongside Ben Gretch at Yards Per Gretch on Twitter. Also, my man Josh ADHD at Fantasy ADHD on Twitter. Guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah? How's Week 3 been for you so far?
You know, up and down.
Yeah.
It's been a weird week. I did all right in seasonal. I lost a little bit in DFS. I was a little too heavy on Latavius Murray, a little too heavy on some Ebron pivots that didn't work out. Ebron didn't hit either, but Ian Thomas didn't hit. Ryan Grant was all right, but not as good as some cheaper receivers that we'll talk about, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. So it wasn't a great week overall, but, you know, on some good plays as well. So we'll get into it.
Here we are. Yeah. I had Tyler Boyd lock buttoned into both sites, so that was good. What was not good was Julio Jones lock button in both sites. 5 touchdowns, and you're telling me that he doesn't get a sniff of a touchdown there?
I believe that is the Julio Jones way.
It is. But you just think that maybe they would do the guy a favor and be like, all right, we're going to get you involved here. But that game, and on the other side as well, Kamara almost had 2 touchdowns. They had a 1-yard pass to some rando. They had, obviously, at the end. Zach Line. They've got the Drew Brees scramble. They had the Kamara pass that was originally called a touchdown. Then it was brought back, and Drew Brees had the sneak to win the game. Just absolutely crazy. I mean, the Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley story was the story of, and Robert Woods also, were the story of kind of the daily scene and also the new waiver wire pickups. I know you guys talked about Tyler Boyd last week. We also talked to him on the SiriusXM show, which was pretty cool. He was very gracious, even though Jeff was being a dick to him, asking him who would finish last. We had this guy on for a post-game show, and Jeff's like, all right, serious question. You, John Ross, and AJ Green line up at the 40, and you race to the touchdown. Who comes in last? And he was like, guess that's me. What else is he going to say? But anyways,
Of course it's him. He's
Of course.
Be like, you son of a bitch, you.
Let's start with the probably the big news of the day, and that is Jimmy Garoppolo's injury. Going down with what we just can. I'm not sure if torn ACL is confirmed, but
it's not confirmed. But
he carted off. You saw the pictures.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of ACLs, and in our unprofessional opinion, or my unprofessional opinion, that it was an ACL.
All right, they're going to bring in C.J. Beathard. He was a quarterback last year, also with Kyle Shanahan's system. Let's talk about the impact kind of rest of season to this 49ers offense with Beathard at the helm. Ben, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so coming into this year, one of the things that I was writing a lot about with the Niners was the target splits between the different quarterbacks in San Francisco last year. So Brian Hoyer started the first 5 games and then was replaced in the 6th game. Beathard started the next 5 and was replaced in whatever game was after that, week 12 or something. And then Garoppolo started the final 5, and each of those 3 had 5 starts and played parts of at least 1 more game. I think Beathard played parts of 2 more games, but they were all within 175 to 225 pass attempts. They were their season was split into thirds really evenly between these 3 quarterbacks. But they had very different splits. Garoppolo and Hoyer, to a little bit lesser extent, but similar to Garoppolo, they both were willing to push the ball downfield, get the ball to the receivers, and play like an NFL offense. The downfield receivers tended to perform better because those guys were willing to support higher ADOT receivers. And the big relevance of that for me was people were really referencing Carlos Hyde's 88 targets last year vis-a-vis Jerick McKinnon and how he was going to have all these receptions in the Kyle Shanahan offense. So each of those three quarterbacks essentially played a third of the season. Of those 88 targets Carlos Hyde got, 50 of them came from C.J. Beathard. All three of those quarterbacks, again, they all threw within like 50 pass attempts of each other. But Beathard threw more passes to Hyde than the other two quarterbacks combined. And the same was true for Breda as well, the backup running back. So Beathard just plays a completely different style. He completely checks the ball down, very underneath passing, and we're probably going to see a lot of running back targets. I'll have to dig into the tight end numbers a little bit more. But this is
Kittle. You got the Kittle shower narrative as well. You know, they both played at Iowa. They had that connection. Josh, as far as the running back situation, like Breida looked good again today. 10 carries for 90 yards. Had 3 catches, all 3 targets for 27 yards. Alfred Morris actually out-carried him, 14 carries for 67 yards. I'm not sure why they were running the ball so much when they were down, but it is what it is. And Alfred didn't get any reception. So what's your take going forward on like who the Hyde running back is going to be as far as the pass catching running back?
I mean, I guess it's going to be Breda, but I think we have to be cognizant of Kyle Juszczyk because he got 4 targets again today. He didn't get any carries, but that again, they're still using him like a third down back, so to speak. So if we think a guy's going to get heavy target usage at the running back position, I think Juszczyk is as good a candidate as Breda to be that guy, and they very well could just split it 50-50.
Kittle looked good. 5 catches on his 7 targets for 79 yards. Pierre Garcon, 4 targets, 1 catch on 11 yards, but he might be a benefactor of the whole check down kind of basically dink and dunk type offense here. Sorry if you are a Marquise Goodwin owner.
Yeah, so I just pulled the numbers up. Carlos Hyde had a 23% target share when Beathard was at quarterback, which led the team by 8 percentage points. He was at 12% with Hoyer, 9% with Garoppolo. So way, way higher. And then Goodwin was basically the opposite. He was 14% playing with Beathard. He was 24% when Garoppolo took over. That was a big reason everybody was on Goodwin this offseason, that Garoppolo really liked him late in the year and he was the leading target getter during that period. But we're probably going to see a little bit less downfield throwing.
All right. Let's move on to another story that is the Calvin Ridley story. Calvin Ridley is a guy that did not have a good preseason at all. It looked like Sanu was kind of ahead of him as number 2 receiver. He obviously today just went nuts. And he had 43 and a half DraftKings points, 7 catches, 146 yards on 8 targets, 3 touchdowns, 1 rush for 9 yards, 43 points. That's just insane. Obviously, we can't expect that week after week, but this Falcons offense with Ridley, a rookie who's actually like 28. I mean, he's not young at all. But Josh, what's your take on Ridley with this offense?
Well, I'm not so sure what to think about Ridley. I need to look at the context because what I see is that New Orleans is vulnerable deep down the field. Calvin Ridley had an ADOT of 1875 today on 8 targets. That is significant air yardage. We know that New Orleans was had by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers deep down the field in week 1. And I think if Cleveland had been able to pull their heads out in week 2, they probably would have had some deep balls get downfield on them too. Maybe if they had Baker Mayfield instead of Tyrod Taylor quarterback. So I see a pattern developing with New Orleans that they can be had deep. What does that mean for Ridley going forward? I don't know. I think it depends on if they play a defense that's vulnerable to the deep ball. And they're going to run into those going forward. Atlanta will. They're going to see plenty of those. So I think Ridley's probably here to stay. His role has increased each week going forward. They needed him today because he's effectively the, I'd say the 2B receiver in that offense. And Atlanta was playing catch up when they weren't ahead, so it was a shootout. They had to have him in a shootout today. So if they get in a shootout, they got a defense that's vulnerable to deep ball. I'm firing that up. I don't have any issue rostering for that.
How owned is he in leagues, Ben?
I don't know.
I'm guessing he's like kind of the Callaway, Boyd.
Yeah, I'm sure he's available in a lot of leagues. I mean,
shallow leagues, I think, but like competitive leagues, maybe not, because he got drafted. I mean, he was being drafted, and I don't think anybody dropped him after the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's been running routes. He's definitely been involved. He has run fewer routes than Sanu in both weeks 1 and 2. Obviously, we don't have the routes run numbers yet for week 3. We'll have to look at that. But this was undoubtedly a breakout game. And one of the big things with rookies just generally is you expect their playing time to potentially grow throughout the season as they carve out a role. They're not necessarily going to be every down players week 1. He's clearly made his statement and made a big statement this week. So I would expect him to be heavily involved going forward. You're not going to see Julio Jones be as uninvolved as he was this week. Generally speaking, this offense flows through Jones and it flows through Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman next. And then like last year, it was Hooper and Sanu kind of competing for that fourth equity share. Ridley can certainly, he again, similar to the playing time thing, any rookie has inherent upside as well, just because we don't really know what they are. And I mean, a lot of guys that we don't think are very good, they have breakout rookie seasons sometimes, or maybe we do think they're good, whatever it is. But he clearly looks like he can play at the NFL level, and that's a positive sign for anybody who has him, and a very much a reason to go get him. I got a question today, presumably from somebody who doesn't have waivers, like late in the day, whether they should go add Ridley, Tyler Boyd, or Geronimo Allison. And I went to my rest of season ranks from last week, and I had all 3 of those guys within 4 spots of each other. And so I told him Ridley because, based on what we saw this week, I mean, you have to bump him up for that. I mean, it was a very, very impressive week. Obviously, Boyd and Allison both performed this week as well, but Ridley was kind of the star. So I think I would have him over guys like that for sure. I don't know if I would, jam him into my lineup next week, but definitely somebody who we're seeing a lot of positive signs. And I just am a little bit concerned about the concentration of the offense and whether it will be able to continue.
All right. You talked about Tyler Boyd. Yes, he did have a good game. 6 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Part of that, A.J. Green left the game. They're also kind of playing from behind. But, we saw it last week. He's getting targets more so than John Ross. John Ross, 3 catches for 16 yards, did have 7 targets. But Tyler Boyd, 6 of 7 targets, had a 49-yarder on busted coverage. Like, he stood out again this week. And if he's still there in the waiver wire, you're picking him up. I just want to know, like, is it this at a point where we can start him basically in leagues, like as a wide receiver 3 or a potential flex play, Josh?
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's the proof's been in the pudding so far. They're proving it with his usage. He had the highest ADOT on the offense today, just over 16. And combine that with the number of targets he saw, I mean, he's here to stay, bro.
Yeah, he actually didn't get as many targets as he saw in Carolina. He saw the same number of catches. But they also used him in a rushing attempt. It's always a good sign when they try to get guys involved also on the ground as well. I know that Manny Sanders had a nice little rushing touchdown today. Oh, by the way, Ben, David Johnson. David Johnson got outscored by Kareem Hunt. I will I'll let you know my PayPal later. It actually cost me more because I did put him in like a kind of a expensive GPP lineup because I'm like, oh, Ben said so. Well, in the first drive, it's like, oh, this is nice. But then, like, why do you put Chase Edmonds in for David Johnson?
I don't even want to go there. I mean,
right.
That was insane. That was
okay. Well, we talked about it. We talked about it in the Sirius XM show for a while Friday night. I'm letting you kind of recalibrate here. Where would you put him rest of the season now?
Yeah, no, I'm actually.
You're still buying.
If anything, okay. I might even be bumping him up a little bit. I thought today was promising. So, first of all, their offense looked okay early on. They had an efficient drive. They got a long touchdown. Then they got a quick turnover, and he got out into a route and caught a touchdown with some air yards under it. It was nice to actually see that, even though he came out of the backfield. And then the offense went right, like they were up, and they got even more conservative than they've been. The whole issue has been they haven't sustained drives, and they've had really low play volume, and they got to a point where they were running no plays at all. they went into the third. The big thing I've been talking about is how they've been super slow overall, period. But they've racked up some plays in garbage time fourth quarters. They ran 27 plays through the first 3 quarters in week 1, 30 in week 2. Those are tiny numbers. Today, they had only run 31 plays through the first 3 quarters. Again, just extremely slow-paced. But obviously, they pulled Sam Bradford, and they brought in Josh Rosen. And honestly, he just played one quick drive, but he completed some passes down the field. I mean, he was willing to let some plays develop. He stood in the pocket. I mean, Sam Bradford's thing, if you watch him, he's just first read throwing the ball immediately. He looks like a guy who's afraid to get hit, who doesn't even want to be on an NFL field. He's been injured a lot in his career. I mean, I'm not going to like judge the guy, but he like genuinely doesn't look like he really is trying to play the position, go through the read, stand in there, take hits. Like he's just trying to throw the ball, and he doesn't really care if he throws a pick or whatever. So the reason I think it was promising, we saw DJ get out in a route and catch a long touchdown. We saw a little bit more out of we saw Rosen, period, and we saw a little bit more out of the offense, in my opinion, in that really small sample. And if Rosen continues to start, I would expect that the offense can actually run decent amounts of plays going forward, which would be good for Johnson. The usage with Edmonds was weird. I mean, for the first 2 games, just those first 3 quarters, David Johnson had 21 of the 24 running back touches in the offense, 87.5%. It would be the 3rd highest workhorse share of a running back for any back in the league. Edmonds has been getting touches in the 4th quarter. Today's game, Edmonds was more involved earlier on, which was a little bit weird. I want to dig into those numbers a little bit more before I make too big of a judgment on that. But yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt was very much a donkey play. He got lucky, got 2 1-yard rushing touchdowns, still not getting targets, which was
he's still not getting targets, but he does have incredible touchdown equity in this offense that cannot be stopped. I mean, you are going to have days where you've got a guy that's not – like one of these guys not going to produce every once in a while, like Tyreek Hill today. But, yeah, saying that the running back that got 18 carries for a team that scores 40 points a game, it's a donkey play. That's interesting.
You just got to hope that they get tackled at the 1-yard line before they score.
Right. That's the only way you can score.
Or defensive pass interference. I mean, there's so many different –
too.
I mean, yeah, if that's the angle you're playing for a Kareem Hunt upside, Godspeed.
Scenarios.
Tyler Boyd, though, I didn't jump on him, but both his 27-yard touchdown and his 49-yard reception, both those came in the touchdown came in the late 3rd, the 49-yard reception in the 4th. Both were after AJ Green left the game. Boyd was very clearly the number 1 after AJ Green left, but I mean, I think that's a notable point that his role expanded very much after Green left. And if Green's healthy, I mean, I still think Boyd is very good, but AJ Green's going to be the number 1, the dominant number 1, and they have other options in this offense. I don't think you should be holding Ross at all. Ross looks completely disinterested in playing football. He's not even looking for the ball. I mean, it was terrible. It was gross. So
all right. The another thing as far as something that we noticed that we got to talk about, Jeff's not on the show, probably a good thing for him. Andrew Luck. They're down. They need a touchdown to win. They're on their own like 40, 45-yard line, and it's time to throw the Hail Mary. What do? They pull Andrew Luck. They put in Jacoby Brissett. That is all the information that we needed to know that Andrew Luck's arm is not fully healthy. People can say whatever they want, but that was the definitive news. When it came down, when push came to shove, and we said, okay, what are we gonna see here from Andrew Luck? Well, we didn't see anything because they pulled him. He just is not throwing the ball down the field, and that's going to affect his receivers. So Andrew Luck's stock going way down. Suck it, Jeff.
I couldn't disagree more.
Why?
I couldn't disagree more. Because it was just a Hail Mary. I mean,
why didn't he throw the Hail Mary, Ben?
Because
it's not unprecedented.
It's not unprecedented. And I'm trying to look up right now, but I think this happened to Aaron Rodgers after he came back from his collarbone, or it happened to somebody where they brought him
sounds
back
right.
They brought him back up to throw the Hail Mary. They were on their own 45. Jacoby Brissett threw that ball from his own 40 because he had to kind of scramble around a little bit. He had to clear 60 air yards on that throw. That's incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah,
And
especially for an injured arm.
Right. So no one thinks Andrew Luck's 100%. I mean, if you think that, if looking at his ADOT for the first 2 weeks, then
but that's the whole point. Like,
but I don't think we learned anything new with him not throwing them not asking him with a fatigued shoulder or, potentially not 100% shoulder to throw a 60-yard bomb.
All right. Here's the thing. With 2 minutes left in the game, he had 80 yards passing. 80 yards passing. He finished up with two like garbage time drives where he's just dumping down to Eric Ebron. He finished with 164 yards passing, an average pass of 4.1 yards. Like this.
Oh yeah, I mean he wasn't good.
Right, it's what I'm saying. Like his stock is down, and you can't.
I don't think the Hail Mary has anything to do with it.
I think it does because they're not extending the field. You're not seeing the typical down the field bombs to T.Y. Hilton that you've seen in the past with Andrew Luck. You're not seeing like his ADOT being that.
But that might be the structure of the offense with Frank Reich at the helm versus what they had before. So, Dave, I see your argument, but I think it's potentially short-sighted. I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is
I am.
What we saw. Yeah, that's fine. I'm trying to be political about it. So
right.
what I'm saying is,
if it looks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then he's probably going to throw a duck on a Hail Mary. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he probably would, but we might see Alex Smith in
that
situation too.
It's just amazing to me. I got a stat guy here. We have stats that can prove that he's not throwing the ball down the field, and then I also have another stat guy that is intent on signal and noise. And we have like all these red flag signals coming up, and he's like, "Oh, let's just move past all these signals." These red flags. Let's just throw all these red flags over.
No, his ADOT's not all the way there. That doesn't mean he can't be a successful fantasy quarterback. He threw for 300 yards already once this year. He's been halfway decent in week 1 and 2, and he hasn't been pushing the ball down the field. He's been dinking and dunking.
Week 1, he was decent. Week 2, he was not decent. He had 179 yards. Didn't even have 200 yards passing. Like the.
But that's who he's going to be, I think, all year this year.
And I agree, and that's why I'm saying his stock is down.
Right,
stock is down.
Sure.
That was my original point, and you said you couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, so real quick.
With the Hail Mary being significant to that, I think I don't think that changed anything we already knew.
You don't do a nightly show yet with Jeff Johnson where he's saying the arm is completely fine. There's nothing structurally wrong with it. Like that was everything that we need to know. And Jeff even admitted it, which is
Jeff's been believing that the arm is fine.
So you're triggered by Jeff and taking it out on us.
He's a top 3 quarterback. That's what Jeff said. He's not like he's a guy that I'm not sure. I'm not sure you even keep him around if there's like a decent guy. You could stream another quarterback over him in a good matchup. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well, I think that's a perfectly fine thing to say too. I don't have any issue with that.
All right.
I don't have an issue with it either. They don't have much of a running game. I think they will throw plenty. In my rest of season ranks going into this week, I had him at QB7. I mean, I don't have him as a top 3 guy, but I think he'll have volume. I mean, week 1, we saw him throw 53 times in a game they were actually leading for most of, and Cincinnati came back and beat them. They had a bigger lead in week 2, and he only threw 31 times. But, yeah, he's not going to have a huge yards per attempt this year. I agree with that, but I think we already kind of knew that going into today. Today was definitely not a positive by any means, but I don't think the Hail Mary should be read into too much personally.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we get done with the show tonight, I'm going to drop a viz on Twitter of his air yard profile. And just to sum it up real quick, there's a wall 6 yards past the line of scrimmage where his air yard pass is it just drops off a cliff. And I'd say
significant.
Maybe 20% of his passes are further than 6 yards past the line of scrimmage.
I'd say less than that. Like the first game was like one pass that was like past 20 yards down the field out of 40. So, or out of 50 something.
Yeah, 53. Yeah, he was way underneath. I wrote about that too. His ADOT was like 4 or something. It was really low, or 5.1 or something. I don't know, but
even lower here too. All right, let's move on to 2 other stories. Mike Williams. Some people I'm sure have dropped him. He had 2 big catches for touchdowns in today's game. You had this offense looked like good in parts, but it was a shootout and the Rams were just tough, right? But if he did this against the Rams, you have to figure that they're going to try to do this some more. Josh, we'll start with you on Mike Williams.
He's the tight end one. He took over. He took over the Hunter Henry role.
God, I
Took
wish
over
he
the
was
Antonio Gates role.
I wish he was tight end eligible. We need
Yeah, no joke. I mean, but that's exactly the role he's playing in that offense. When they get in the red zone, they look for him if they're not looking for Keenan Allen. So it's a great role, man. We know what the tight end does with Phillip Rivers, and if that's going to be Mike Williams, you got to snatch him up.
Ben?
I dig it. Yeah, I mean, but he also, like, the first TD was a 42-yarder. I mean, he got downfield. He's obviously talented. He was a top 10 pick.
I was about to say, when a team spends that much capital on you, they typically want it to work out.
Right, unless
Yeah,
they're the
you would think
Bengals.
so.
Because the
I mean,
Bengals are
John
doing
Ross.
everything they can to ruin their top 10 pick.
They
But,
use him a lot like they used to use Malcolm Floyd,
yeah,
which is,
that's a good. Yeah, that's a good.
and I think they're very similar players.
So the only pump the brakes thing I would do, because I like throw cold water on everything, is
Sure.
Travis Benjamin was out last week. He was out again this week. In week 1, he ran one more route than Mike Williams, not a ton more, but Keenan Allen's going to be the heavy target hog. He wasn't today. They played a really tough team that obviously keyed on Keenan Allen. A really tough secondary that obviously keyed on Keenan Allen, and Allen's targets were down a little bit today. And then Melvin Gordon is typically going to see plenty of targets. He only saw 4 today. So there was more opportunity today than there's typically going to be, especially with Travis Benjamin being out. And when we talk about those downfield targets, because that's where Benjamin gets downfield targets. That's about all he gets. So him being out in week 1, Tyrell Williams ran 40 routes. Benjamin ran 32. Mike Williams ran 31. So they were all kind of in that same range. Last week with Benjamin out, Tyrell and Mike Williams ran 27 and 26 respectively. Tyrell, obviously Mike Williams played a lot better than Tyrell this week, but I would just say, when Travis Benjamin gets back, I would want to see Mike Williams produce in the more crowded receiving core before I run him out there. I mean, very good day today, very promising. I mean, I will say that.
All right, let's talk about Chris Carson, because he had 32 touches. I mean, he looked good too, man. This is like why I did not understand the whole he was gassed, so they took him out the whole second half.
I mean, they completely right.
Like if he's,
they were saving him.
Yeah, they completely showed that their own point from last week was like
BS.
A lie. Yeah, a complete lie. They use him. He actually had 34 touches, 32 carries, 2 catches as well. And Rashad Penny only had 3 carries and didn't have a catch. So
he went over 100 yards.
Yep, over 100 yards rushing.
Touchdown.
You want to see. I mean, I think if he's on your waiver wire, you're definitely putting in a claim for him. He looks like
this is the Seahawks' first home game. They beat Dallas. Dallas is like, don't touch Dallas at all unless it's Zeke. But you've got Tyler Lockett, who had a very nice game again, 4 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. But Chris Carson, if he's the bell cow back of this offense, you want to pick him up if someone has dropped him, which after last game they might have. So he is the top running back pickup if there is one. All right, I guess.
Yeah.
Lastly,
actually, real quick. Let's rag on me real quick. My signal in stealing signals last week for the Seahawks was how much of a committee this backfield was, because they used 4 guys last week. They used Mike Davis. He had like 4 carries. And they used CJ Procise in the passing game. And then all of a sudden today, neither of those guys got a touch. Or Mike Davis had a catch, but no rushes. CJ Procise didn't have a touch. And Rashad Penny had 3 touches. And Chris Carson dominated the backfield. So a complete script flip from what they did last week, where 4 different backs all had multiple touches.
It helped that they had the lead the entire game.
Sure.
I think it might have just been more of an attitude thing that they did. They talked during the week. They were publicly recommitting to the run this week. And they said they were just going to run the ball to death regardless of the situation. This time they were ahead, and they just let their running back kill the clock. I don't know I don't think we're going to see this going forward. I don't know if he's going to eclipse 100 yards again this season. That offense is bad, dude. And they got to catch Dallas without Sean Lee for most of the game. And when Dallas doesn't have Sean Lee, they're a joke. Like, they can't stop anybody, especially in the run. So I don't know. It's buyer beware for me. If you're desperate for touches, you can go get them, but I think you can look elsewhere.
I think that's a fair point. He only hit 102 yards on 32 rushes at 3.2 yards per carry. I mean, yards per carry is kind of a fluky stat, but it's not like he lit it up. It was very much a volume game. So I think it's a fair point.
Yeah, well, a lot of those also came at the end when they were trying to ice the game as well. All right, the last thing I want to discuss is Baker Mayfield because he is going to be available in a lot of leagues. I've got just checked 8 of my leagues, 4 of them he's available in. We're talking about a guy who has a pretty high ceiling. You know, there could be some up and downs with him as well, but let's just flat out tell, like, where would you put Baker Mayfield rest of season as far as quarterbacks go? Is he top 12 quarterback? Is he a guy that's like, if you had Jimmy Garoppolo, you could just like slot him in there? Josh, you're kind of giving me the pump the brakes kid look.
Yeah, I'm definitely pumping the brakes. I mean, granted, he only played one half of football, but I am hesitant just because I'm hesitant because of the offense itself, not because of Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield played amazing, but Baker Mayfield also didn't have a defense that schemed for him that week, which I think helped his case. So I think you have to go get him because of the upside. We saw the upside. We saw what the offense could do with a little bit of pizzazz at the quarterback position. So I think you have to go get him. But I think to expect QB1 numbers out of him going forward, I think is a bit much. I think if he gave you QB 16, QB 18 on a consistent basis, you take it in a heartbeat.
Ben?
I'm just going full fanboy. I mean, it was amazing. He looked like he has all the swagger in the world. We saw Deshaun Watson come in as a rookie and do it right away last year. We're seeing Patrick Mahomes take the league by storm in his first year. The guy who really kind of started that trend was Cam Newton back in his rookie year, had a really big start to his career. I think it's like it used to be the thing where rookies couldn't play in the NFL. I think it's certainly feasible, and he looked the part. He made a lot of really difficult throws. He made some awesome reads. I mean, the scout guys out on Twitter pointing out some of the things he was doing were really impressive. I mean, I think one of the big things that I noticed that I was impressed with was he seems to like one of the things I look for with quarterbacks is whether they stare down their receivers or they stare down the defense and trust that their receivers are going to be in the right spot. And he seems to be focused on the defenders and throwing away from the defenders, knowing his receivers are going to be in these spots and not necessarily worrying about trying to lead his receiver and then getting undercut. And he did that really, really well. Like there was a couple tight window throws where people were saying, oh, this is an amazing throw. But if you break it down, you saw that like the defenders were maybe a little off balance and leaning the opposite way. So he knew he could fit the ball in that window. And it just shows that his focus was on those defenders. They weren't going to be able to change direction and get to that spot. So he knew he had a second to throw that pass. It's a really impressive trait for a rookie to already have. For me, I mean, I'm excited for him, man. I'm
all right. So let me give you some names.
Okay.
Jared Goff or Baker Mayfield rest of the season?
I'll take Mayfield. I mean, Goff had a big day today.
Yeah, he had a big day, almost 30 points.
And that's a good offense, but I think I think he's kind of a meh quarterback, and I think Mayfield has more upside. I think he has some rushing upside too.
All right. Josh, you're taking Goff.
Yeah, but I think it's very close.
All right. What about Andrew Luck or Baker Mayfield rest of the season?
Ooh.
I take Mayfield.
Yeah, I might take Mayfield too after what we saw today. I'm going to definitely move Luck down a little bit.
But that's purely based on weapons around him.
Right. Exactly. Which brings me to my next one. Russell Wilson or Baker Mayfield going forward?
I'll stay with Wilson.
I take Baker Mayfield.
Ooh.
Again, it's weapons. It's weapons and scheme. All about weapons and scheme.
All right. Good. That's what I want to see. I want to see some hot takes. I want to see some Baker Mayfield love. We love Baker Mayfield around here.
I think you can think of him as a back-end QB1 until we don't see that. And I think we're going to see that. I really do.
Oh, man. He makes it move so much. All right. Final thoughts for this week 3 going into week 4?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, Ben, I kind of like to touch on your tight end subject a little bit. And both of us banter about this because
you want to touch on his tight end?
I do, yes.
All right, go ahead.
Kittle, definitely his George Kittle. So it's just tight ends is a nuclear wasteland right now, just like it was last year and the year before it. So, you know, Ben, I think you agree with that. You were the one that brought it up pre-show, and I just think it's worth echoing here that if you're frustrated with tight end, you just join everybody else because we're all frustrated with tight end. We don't know who to play each week, and it's just I'd say it's a coin flip, except there's like 40-sided coins that are in front of us, and you don't know which side's going to come up ahead. So just bear with it and play the best matchup you think you can get.
Kyle Rudolph lucked out at the end by getting a touchdown. Other than that, other than Travis Kelce, it was Dallas Goedert, number 2 tight end. Kittle's going to be good. Travis Kelce's going to be good. Like
Zach Ertz is going to be good. Gronk's going to be good. I mean, we knew coming in, we talked about this a lot in the offseason and in our draft kit, that there was a big teardrop after the top 3. I just didn't expect it to be this big. But when you lose Hunter Henry preseason, and then you lose Delaney Walker in week 1, and you lose Greg Olsen in week 1, those are like all guys that you would fit in that tight end 4 to tight end 10 range, right? So now, you know, guys like Jordan Reed, I still think have the upside if he starts to play more snaps as he gets healthier. Tyler Eifert played more snaps in week 2 and ran a lot more routes than in week 1, and then had a good day here in week 3. I'm definitely going to be looking at his usage numbers. But there's just a lot of guys that we're looking at in that range that probably don't necessarily belong in that range in like most seasons. And it's just because some of the better tight ends in the league have been injured or knocked out. OJ Howard's another one that I'm really interested in looking into tomorrow, because Cameron Brate played less than their 3rd blocking tight end.
Yeah, didn't have any snaps either.
What's that?
Or didn't have any catches either.
Didn't have any catches. So yeah, it looks like they might be moving away from Brate as kind of the preferred or like the secondary receiving option. And if they're going to have that Auclair guy on in 2 tight end sets with Howard might be able to get out into more routes. So that's something to watch. And he has just phenomenal yards per route run, like efficiency metrics so far in his career dating back to last year, but he just hasn't run a ton of routes because they like him as a blocker as well. So that's a guy to watch. But yeah, I mean, like in DFS, week 1, you wanted to have Gronk. Week 2, you wanted to have Kelce or Ertz. You wanted to be paid up for those guys while Gronk was playing the Jaguars as it played out. And like not necessarily, you know, what I did or what everyone was advocating to do, but that's how it played out. And then this week again, you know, you wanted to have paid up for Kelce or Ertz. Gronk wasn't on the main slate, but
even if he was, Gronk's not having a great game right now. The Patriots are getting slaughtered.
Right.
They're looking like a donkey team with some of the play calls that are going on right now, just forcing the ball to Sonny Michel. On the opposite side, Kerryon Johnson crushing it. 6 carries, 101 yards. So 0 RB, it's back. Chris Carson, Kerryon Johnson. We're going to have, I'm sure tomorrow, your boy, Ronald Jones. Ben.
I've had some donkey takes so far this year, but I've had some decent ones.
He'll be back. You have had some really good ones. The Robert Woods concentrated offense.
I feel like I'm hitting like 80%, but all my profile ones are just really, they're just really tanking.
You need to. It's your brand guys.
Yeah, my brand guys are just like they're not doing well.
The Rams concentrated offense one from stealing signals last week was clutch. Kupp and Woods just crushed. Woods you talked about how he's unlucky. He just absolutely crushed it today. You know, won people thousands sometimes. You know, he was in the millionaire lineups on both sides. So it's like he's going to be fine going forward. We're seeing some patterns. That's why I can't wait for this week's Stealing Signals. Catch that on fantasyinsiders.com with Ben Gretch. You can find him on Twitter at yardspergretch. And then
catch the Yards Per Gretch article on Roto-Grinders on Fridays. I had Woods in that this week. I had Diggs and McCaffrey in it last week. It was and had Fuller and Kamara, who everyone had.
All right, we get it. You had a great, unbelievable week.
I'm on a roll.
He just got to play all those guys.
Catch all of Josh's tools on the Fantasy Insider site. We got some new stuff coming as well. He always DMs me with some cool stuff and, just very, very nerdy, which I like. And I'm sure other people like as well. Helps them make their decisions for the season and for the week. That will do it for the show. Tweet us at Fantasy Insiders, at Yards Per Gretch, at Fantasy ADHD, at Soccer Dave. If you have any specific questions, we'll try to get them answered for you on Twitter. And, check out the site. We'll see you next week, week 5 of the Early Waiver Wire show here on fantasyinsiders.com.